everyone, and it's great to be here again. This session is called Project Management Part 2, and it's a follow-on really from the session that we did about a month or so ago, looking at just the basics of project management, which is called Part 1. So just a little bit of background about me, first of all. I sort of work independently, and I'm a qualified leadership coach and a qualified program manager as well. So I'm really experienced. I've got both the experience of actually working in and running projects and programs, as well as the sort of the learning side of it and being able to pass that knowledge on. So I really specialise in developing project managers, sort of taking them sort of beyond the sort of tasks management into looking at how they're working with stakeholders, etc. I also run my own leadership development programs. I do leadership coaching, and I do interim L&D roles and project roles as well. So it's a variety of things. So, but it's there to sort of say, you know, I come from a point where it's not just theory. I've actually lived it and breathed it and worked in it. So I use that alongside my theory. So today, we're going to look at the Introduction to Project Management Part 2. Now, when we did Part 1, we looked at the 4 key stages in a project. So we talked about how do you define your project, how do you plan it out, how do you manage it once it's underway, and how do you review it when you've finished. And at the end of the session, we talked about you know, what would be useful for people to see next, and we asked people which area they'd like a second part to focus in on, and it was very much the manage piece that people were most interested in. So that's really what we're going to focus in on today. And if there are people on the call who missed the first one, it's still available on Shorebird, so I'm sure you'll be able to find it by searching under my name, and I'm sure Liz is probably going to put you a link on in the box as well in a few moments.
Absolutely.
So we're going to focus in on this third area, and so what I'm going to look at in this webinar is, and it will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but it hopefully give you some good ideas, is about, you know, you've got a plan, so how do you monitor it? How do you make sure that everything is working the way it should? How do you manage the differing work streams? How do you manage project meetings so that they are, you know, making sure that your project's staying on track and it's running really effectively? How can you manage differing stakeholders, and what's useful from a project reporting point of view? So those are sort of key areas digging into that sort of managing a program or project type of area. So hopefully that's going to resonate with some of you. So at this point, we'd like to just do, it's a poll that we did before as well, actually, because it's just interesting to understand from the people that are on the call at the moment, you know, what your involvement is. So I wondered if I could ask you all just to pick the statement that you think is nearest to you. So sometimes people are attending these webinars and they're not involved in projects. Some are impacted by them but don't deliver them themselves. Some are working on a project that someone else is leading, and some people are leading a project for their business. So we've got quite a strong, oh no, it's changing, I'll wait. I'll wait until you publish it, Liz, and then we'll see. So have a moment or two just to decide whereabouts you think you would put your vote. Okay, do we think that's long enough for people to have a look? Is that the result, Liz?
It is, yeah, I've broadcast it there for you, yeah.
Okay, smashing. So we can see there's probably an even split between people who are working on a project that someone else is leading and people who are leading the project for the business. And then we have a couple of people who are impacted by projects. So it's always useful to understand a bit more about how projects are running and are run, even if you are, you know, being impacted by rather than leading one. So that's really interesting. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to move on. Don't know, Liz, I can, oh, great, thank you. Just saying that I could only see the vote. So the next slide is really about monitoring the plan. So the example that we're going to talk about, we're going to say, you know, the project's already underway, and you know, it's en route. So that's the point at which we are managing it. So it's underway, and really plans are built with everyone's best understanding at the time. So it's not a case of it's going to be a perfect result every time. So lots of effort, usually goes into creating a plan, but that doesn't mean it's right. And as project managers, I'd encourage us not to be disappointed, but to actually be quite encouraged when it needs to change, because usually that is indicating that actually there's better understanding of what is required as we're going along. So by involving people and getting them to discuss it, it really helps to sort of bring that understanding. So if you think about all the people who are representing the areas that are going to be impacted by your project, then actually make sure they've got a really good opportunity to add their thoughts to the planning process. It's a little bit of it's still in the plan there, but because they've been involved in it, when you come into the managing the plan, you can refer back to those conversations. So people tend to not respond terribly well when something is done to them, but when they're involved in something, it makes a really big difference, and it creates ownership for them. So they're more likely to be able to deliver what you're wanting. So if you think of the plan as constantly evolving rather than being static, although the key deliverables may well be static, so you may well be working towards a particular date and to deliver certain things, that maybe doesn't change. But actually the project plan, as you get more understanding, as it gets underway, there's always going to be something that somebody's missed that needs building in, or an impact that somebody hadn't seen that needs accounting for. So it's not a perfect art where you do a planning session and then that's it, that's what you go with. Yes, that's what you go with, but don't expect that your project plan won't change. We also, keep people involved in the plan, which is kind of what I'm saying above. As tasks are identified, the better open you keep those communication lines, the more likely you're going to know exactly what's going on in the different work streams. So keep people involved with the plan, add in the tasks as they're identified, and recognise kind of what's happening as you're going along. And I think regular meetings with your work stream owners are really key to understanding what's really going on. So you could have a lovely project plan that looks great, and people are ticking off the tasks as they go along, and then all of a sudden you find that actually it's not quite where you thought it was. So I would suggest, regular meetings with workstream owners, get them to show you what they've done, show you what the outputs are, evidence that these tasks are in place. And you can do that by getting them to, by offering praise. Oh, that's great, that looks really good. Oh, can I see that? I've heard some really good things about it. So, you can do it in a way it doesn't have to feel like you're just checking up on them. It's kind of recognising what's there. And my last point here is really, it does confirm that tasks have been completed. So, ask to see the output. So I also recommend having a really large physical version of the plan, so people see how things fit together. So when I've run projects, sometimes I've had a massive whiteboard covered in post-it notes, and the post-it notes are the activities or the actions or the tasks, and you can actually see how they flow, and it's a really visual thing for how one department might be waiting for the activities of another department before they can start. And so people can see, actually, if we don't finish on time, the next thing isn't going to start. So a really good idea is to have some sort of either a really large printout or a milestone plan that shows people exactly what you're doing. And you can kind of have a big arrow that points where today is. Excuse me, a big arrow that points where today is, a big sort of star that says this is what we're aiming for. So that's really useful. So that kind of monitoring the plan, keeping it alive for people, showing them how it changes, can be really, really helpful. So has anybody got any questions so far? I can see one comment from Shireen, thank you, but do feel free to add in or add your comments or say, oh yes, that's a good idea, or oh, I've never thought of that, or oh, we do something different, because it's always great if people share what they're doing as well. So this is a very simple example of a plan. If you were on the first session, you will recognise this. It's taken from there. What I was talking on that one is that you have a deliverable. So this one, the deliverable was the webinar, and the activities down the left-hand side are the key tasks that need to be completed in order to get the webinar delivered on time. So let's imagine that today is actually the second Monday in the plan. And so depending on whether or not you're using a specialist tool like MS Project or something, you might well be showing that as tasks are completed, they are coloured in, or you might be doing that physically on a board by ticking them off. And it's great. So in this example, the first 3 tasks have been completed. However, Thursday's task of animating the slides has not been done. And so it needs to be done before the facilitator notes can be written or the slides can be uploaded. So having a visual of the plan, you can kind of see immediately that Thursday's second activity hasn't been done, and actually, am I going to make the be ready for the Wednesday to deliver the seminar, the webinar? So it's a great tool for talking about what's happening. So if I was working with somebody who was doing that work for me, I could say to them, oh, we're supposed to have this done by Thursday. It's not been done. Can we get it done on Monday so that I can still get the slides to Shorebird and get them uploaded on Tuesday so I can deliver the webinar on Wednesday? And then you can start to have conversations around, okay, well, if you can't do it, who can? And you turn the conversation into, how do we do it? You know, not, oh, you haven't done this. It's okay, whatever happens, but actually, how are we going to make sure that this happens? So it's a great way to sort of notice that things are falling behind and then ask people what they can do to put things right. So if the facilitating notes could be done on Monday, you can probably still hit your deliverable. If you're not going to hit your deliverable, what are you going to do? You can have a discussion and you can decide how you get things back on track. So it's a really helpful way to talk. It also kind of takes the sort of finger pointing out of it. Instead of saying, you know, you haven't done this, it kind of becomes this is what we needed and this is where we are. How can we solve this problem? So when you sort of point out to somebody that they haven't done something, the likelihood is they kind of go a little bit defensive and they kind of say, oh yeah, well, it was this problem, it was that problem, it was the other problem. Actually, maybe you want to dig into that later, but at the moment you need to focus on, actually, we needed this webinar for Wednesday. We haven't got these tasks done. How are we going to get them done? So it's a different conversation. So I don't know whether people would like to type something in the box as to what they think to that, whether that's an approach that they use already. So, you know, taking a problem-solving approach rather than kind of for want of a better phrase, a finger-pointing approach. So moving on, we're now going to talk about, that was kind of monitoring the plan. Maybe that's given some people some ideas. Be useful if you've got any comments. So now I'm going to look a little bit at managing work streams. So a project, we usually have a number of work streams. So we looked at this a little bit on the first webinar. And, you know, the work streams are going to be different depending on what type of project you are. So I'm just thinking for an HR project, I wonder what type of work streams might you see. So if there's some sort of change in HR or an HR project that HR are leading, say they're going to lead an increase in recruitment, let's say, for a new area, what sort of work streams might you expect to see? And we have some ideas in the chat box to what type of work streams you might see if you were going to recruit a whole new department. I'll give you a couple of minutes to type in, see if anybody's got any ideas. I can hear somebody typing. Okay, so I might give you one idea. I'm not sure if this comes up at one. Oh, no, it came up with them all together. Never mind. Okay, so what we've got here is, so say it was some sort of a project, you might have some processes to develop in terms of how you're going to do that recruitment. You might have some communication to develop to tell the business what's going on. Thank you, Rob. Advertising, that's a really good one. So you might be doing some advertising, yeah. You might be developing some collateral. That might be part of your advertising to sort of encourage people to come and join you. You might need to plan in some training and induction. You might need to make some changes to your system if it's a new thing that you're working on, and then you might need to test it. So there's just some ideas, and you could have any number of those. You know, there's some common ones that will come up time and time again, and then there'll be different ones that are specific to your business. So what I would suggest is that each work stream has an owner. someone who is looking after all the tasks in that work stream and is coordinating all the activity, and who will also take some responsibility for, if I'm waiting for the system development to be finished so that I can start the training development, then actually I want to be talking to the systems development work stream lead to think about actually when are you going to be ready, when can I start getting information from you, and how can I start to develop the training that's going to be needed for these new people. So, you know, what are the links? Can you get them together and start them working and sort of anticipating problems? So moving on again with managing work streams. So we've got a little bit for the project manager. So as well as encouraging the work stream leaders to talk to each other, it's really important that as project manager you meet with the work stream leaders regularly, and that it's a strong supporting relationship with these people. So you really are there to help them, to monitor them, to check that things are working as they should. Okay. And you're going to record their progress on the overall plan. So they might have access to the project plan, they might be allowed to update it, but actually you really want to record their progress on the overall project plan so that you can see what's going on. So it's really important that you're seen there as somebody that's helping them, because I know that my experience is that projects often mean additional work for people. So you know, you need to be kind of there in a supporting role, and recognising their contribution and to the success of the project can really help them a lot. So when people get recognised because they've done well, that tends to inspire them to do further. While you're talking to them, to the work stream individually, it's a really good opportunity to discuss your risks, your assumptions, your issues and your dependencies, and to understand from them what they're finding difficult, and saying things like, so have you got any other ideas about how you might address that? Is there anything that I can do to help? So it's a really sort of important relationship, so you get understanding of how the project is going from their point of view, and you might, by doing this, get early insight into problems that are brewing, that actually they're not quite ready to tell you that it's a problem yet, but they can kind of see it coming along. So what you really want to achieve is that you know everything about that work stream before you get to a project meeting. Excuse me. So you don't want to be hearing things for the first time in the project meeting. You want to already be up to speed. So moving on from managing work streams, that takes us nicely into project meetings. So when you're running a project meeting, you know, meetings can go on for ages. So my view is that meetings should be fairly lean and quick. So what's the purpose of it? So think about, why have you got everybody together? So I'm keeping that overall project goal in mind. So is the discussion that we're having at the moment going to help us to deliver this project? So you really need to kind of take control of it and think about helping people to understand how they fit into that bigger piece of work. You might get some people who say, well, if I'm having a meeting with all the project work stream leaders, why do I need to have a project meeting as well? And that's really, this is bringing everybody together, keeping this common goal, keeping people abreast of what's really happening in the overall project. So, and it's a great opportunity to recognise where people have done well and that things have been delivered, maybe against some very difficult, you know, situations. So keeping everybody up to date with the overall progress is really good. So are there any changes to timings or deliverables? Things are always changing in projects. So are there some changes that are outside of our control that we need to bring in? Are there changes to scope? So are things dropping out of scope? Has something new been identified? Are there any changes to the structure and the personnel? So I've got somebody new working in a particular work stream or leading a particular work stream. The project meeting is always a great opportunity to recognise the key milestones as they are delivered, ideally on time, and also for you to demonstrate your approach as a project manager. So by you arriving, you being organised, you sharing information, you supporting your work streams, you start to build that atmosphere and environment for others working in the project. So it's important not to underestimate the impact that you and your behaviour has on other people. I've then got a suggested agenda. So I would suggest that a good project management meeting would have a project manager's update. So this is where we are, this is what I know. Then kind of suggest to each workstream leader that they have a minute and no more to kind of say, what are our highlights, what have we achieved, what are we pleased with, what are our challenges. Keeping it really snappy, so they maybe do, I sometimes say you can say 3 things that have gone really well, 3 challenges, and you can ask 2 questions or something. So it keeps it really snappy. Keep it looking forward. So, you know, what are we doing? What have we done so far is important, but what's coming up, what's next, and are we on track are the key questions that you want to explore. And then into the RAID log. So what are the risks, assumptions, issues and dependencies, and any latest updates? And then if there's a particular issue that you need to talk about, it's a featured discussion, so it's listed. So we're going to do some problem solving around how can we get the testing back on track or something. So I would highlight that, and I would have that on the agenda before it goes out. So if, you know, again, I've said there, keep positive. If there are problems, ask for ideas. The project will take its lead from you. So if you remain positive and say, I think we can find a way through this, you are far more likely to. Then got a little bit here on managing stakeholders as well. So these are really key people in your project. So kind of thinking about them in terms of how much power or influence do they have over the success of your project, and also how interested are they in the project. So and to what extent will they be impacted. So this model, I have used it before when we looked at change management. So it has 4 quadrants, as any good model does. And along the bottom, it's looking at low level of interest or impact to high level. And at the side, it's looking at low level of power or influence to high level. So in the bottom corner, we have low influence, low interest. And to the right, people who have low level of interest but are low level of influence, highly interested. And then the top 2 are the opposite. So they have high influence, but one has a lower level of interest and the other a high level. So how that translates itself is, what do you need to do in order to keep those people in place? Now, when we used it last time, we did think about who might be in each box. So people who are in the low interest, low power, you kind of just need to monitor them and give them some access to basic information. So typically in that box, you might find other people who work for the organisation who are not directly impacted by the change, but might be interested in it. Over to the right, keep informed. That might be your teams that are going to be impacted by it. So they've got a high level of interest, but relatively little influence in it. To the top right, you've got the people who are really interested and have a lot of influence over what's going to happen. So managers and key people who have a vested interest. And then to the left, you have people who have a lower level of interest, but a really high influence, so typically CEOs, MDs. So you need to give them information that keeps them satisfied. And the types of information that you need, I've put into these boxes. So those people in the left, so maybe other people in the organisation, not directly impacted, but have some interest, you might do some general and some public comms. For people who have a low level of influence, but are highly interested, you want to do, so that could be people impacted directly, it's specific communications, it's answering their concerns, and it's giving them regular updates of what's happening. For people who have a high level of interest and are highly impacted, you need regular meetings to discuss progress, regular reports, involving them in the RAID, involving them in project planning and meetings. So they won't necessarily be work stream leads, they could be, but there will be people whose areas are going to be impacted by this change. And then your sort of MD, senior leader, needs a regular report on what's happening and has any key issues highlighted to them. Ooh. And then I've put some things in, just a sample report here as well. So again, people are often, as I said before, often being asked to do this alongside a day job, and it's extra to them, it's not instead of. So keeping the work stream reporting really simple helps you and them. So if it's really simple, it's easy for you to read as a project manager to see where they are. And it's great to kind of, if you're having a work stream meeting with them, then to sort of go through it and either create it there and then or review it there and then. And I've actually done an example of one on the next slide, which is a completed one. So if this was my sample project with training, I've got some key deliverables in there and when they're due and kind of what my status is against those, so whether I feel, yeah, they're definitely on track, or actually I'm really worried, I don't think I'm going to highlight this one, because instantly I know what I want to talk to you about as my work stream lead. I want to talk about what's holding up the training material design and how we're going to deal with that. And then what are my risks? So look down at my risks, think actually, yeah, I know about all those risks and they're green because I have mitigating actions in place, or they're not, and they're not going to stop me doing anything. But at the bottom I've got an issue which I've not got resolved yet, which is actually I need more training, more trainers in order to achieve what I need to achieve. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So I'm just wondering, covered a lot of content there very quickly. So I'm wondering if anybody's got any questions, because we've got quite a few people still on. So it would be really great. Or just any thoughts? Was that what you were expecting? So I think there were some questions right at the beginning we were asking, and also people put them on the spreadsheet around how you manage getting people to complete tasks. So I wondered whether anybody had found anything in there that they think, actually, I could see how I could use that by changing or using the project reporting, or using the work stream sort of meetings as an idea to sort of help people, or changing the tack that I take on it when I go there, whether any of that had given anybody any ideas. The people not completing tasks is always a difficult one, and I would also say that all projects need a sponsor, and actually, you know, the sponsor is kind of giving you the mandate to go ahead and do this work, and if, you know, if they should be supporting you. So if somebody really isn't doing the project work that you need them to do, it's probably worth a discussion with your sponsor around it, because they need to kind of understand the two sides of benefit and of consequence. So, you know, if it's a project, it's been set up for a reason, there must be some consequences or some benefits to not do, you know, that are not going to be achieved if you don't do it. So I think, you know, there is, if people really aren't doing things, you can only do so much. You can go and talk to them, you can help them, you can offer advice, but ultimately you need to say to them, you know, the benefits of the reason we're doing this is X, Y, and Z, and if we don't do it, the consequences will be. So what will it take for you to get these things done? And if that doesn't work, then I would say refer to your sponsor, or start to, you know, to ask, is this project really important or not? So, you know, and I think that's fairly common in projects, is that you sometimes have to get the sponsor sort of to encourage people if they're not doing things that you know they need to do, rather than take it all on yourself. I think do everything you can to help them to do it, but then if they really won't do it, then you need to refer it back to the sponsor. So I'm going to stop talking at that point, because I've been talking a lot. Thank you, Michelle, for your comments. If I can offer you anything else to help you with your CIPD, do feel free to get in touch with me. I'd be delighted to help you. So can I hand you back to Liz now? Is that okay, Liz?
That's lovely. Thank you there, Jane. Lots of things to think about. And if anyone else says that, Jane says, if anyone has got any more questions, then please get in touch directly. I will put her contact details on the email that I'm going to send through to you. Here are her contact details as I was talking there. They flashing up. And hopefully it's given a lot of us some food for thought. Likewise, please get in touch if you need anything from ourselves. There's my details on the screen now. And finally, I'd just like to let you know that next week we have 2 events taking place. We've got the Art of Meaningful Conversations, which is actually a repeat, but it is almost heavily fully booked. So please feel free to join us there. It was a really good webinar with John Rice. And then I think it's the Wednesday. I think one's Tuesday and one's Wednesday. We've got a Q&A on redundancy and the law with Marie Walsh from Concilia Legal. So that's also supported and hosted by the CIPD North Yorkshire. So please join us then. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Jane. Fantastic. Lots of information to digest there. I'm sure you'll all agree, and look forward to receiving your comments all of you on the Pay Compliment website. Thank you again for joining in and joining us this afternoon. Thank you.